Here we go. RawMikeRichards.com. Broadcasting from the stunning Pacific Junction Hotel, 234 King Street East in downtown Toronto. Coming up today, well, one of my favorite people in the whole world, and probably yours too if you're a Calgary Flames fan or a hockey fan in general, the Hall of Famer and legendary voice of the Calgary Flames, Peter Maher. A lot of people remember Maher in the mornings. We did every day at 8 a.m. Of the things that I've done in my career, that still might be one of my treasured moments with a guy who's I was just so close to. I'm thrilled that we get a chance to talk to him today. But Peter Maher voiced the Flames, and we'll look at some great memories from those years that he called. Also take a look at ice hockey, Dave. Ice hockey. The CFL. The Bombers look pretty good.
Bombers look good. The Jets fell asleep. Unreal.
That, to me, I didn't bet on the game necessarily, but if I had, I would have lost some money because, you know, as Leaf fan, no Austin Matthews for what? Are they saying a month?
Minimum a month, yeah. It was just released this morning with that shoulder injury. So that's a massive loss. And I don't know. If you're Austin Matthews, you don't cut to the net. Don't cut to the net.
Do you think that's what his coach told him to?
I sure hope not. Man, I like you look at the play. He cuts directly. He goes left or right to left, and it's beeline, and he was just stood up in front of the net, and it's like, he shouldn't be that type of player.
Yeah.
That is asked to do that sort of thing. He's not a power forward. He's a big forward, but he's not. He's not going to Keith Tkachuk you or a Cam Neely you or you name it. That's not his game. So no man's land, and he was lit up good.
And a strange in terms of scheduling, Monday nighter with Calgary with the Flames.
Yes, yeah, that's right. Monday night with the Flames. They actually get a little bit busy this week. There's 4 games for the Maple Leafs, and it starts off against the Flames on Monday night.
Well, speaking of the Flames, we talked about Peter Maher, who we'll have on the show in a few minutes here. There are certainly so many moments that I look back and think, the quintessential, I think of a certain age group, a voice of the Flames, because, when you hear the Jerome McGinley's, when you hear just, the Mika Kiprusoff, some of the names you're going to hear, it was just so iconic of that time. And as I said beforehand, these are memories that live with me forever. And they do it because of the voice, and that voice being Peter Maher.
Has the puck behind the net. He works into the blue line, left side. Ferentz over to the right point to Warner. He lets the shot go, deflected wide. Off the glass in left corner to Iginla. Iginla to left circle. Passing to Yell. A shot. Save made by all. Iginla's rebound. Another shot. They score! The Flames win it! Yeah, baby! Overtime, 3-2. Flames gaining the win as Martin Jelena knocks it in on the rebound. Oh, a wild Flame celebration as they score on the power play. Now it's the Flames' turn to race ahead. Kovacic on right wing to center. Hatcher belts him off the puck, but Leopold carries on. Shooting the puck into the Detroit zone. It goes around the end boards with a minute to go in the first overtime period. The puck's in the left corner in the Red Wing zone. The Flames have it. Conroy goes behind the net. He's wrapped up by Lang. The puck into the left corner for Iginla. Iginla to the left circle. Iginla shot. Joseph save. Rebound. They score! Yeah, baby! Yeah, baby! Martin Jelena scores! The Flames win it! 1-0! Yeah, baby!
There is, by the way, the catchphrase, in case you missed it, yeah, baby.
Yeah, baby. Exactly.
They had a keychain. Someone made a keychain at the time for a beer opener, and that's a sound. Yeah, baby. That's what you get to hear.
That's a good idea.
That's a great keychain. For sure it is. Peter Maher, and his story is, You know, Dave, I think in this day and age, there's a feeling that, let's say you want to be in sports radio, you want to be a play-by-play guy. There is an assumption, I think, sometimes where kids go to these universities or these so-called media schools, that they're just going to finish their schooling and like apply for a job and they're going to get it. Now, sadly these days, sometimes that is happening. We're like, yeah, how much you going to work for? 25 grand, you're hired. And that's why you hear and see some of the stuff you do on radio and television. It just was not that way in the day. You had to work from humble and very modest beginnings. So just before we get to our good friend Peter Maher, the legend, just have a little look on how he actually got to be that voice we just heard. It was certainly a long journey, an adventurous one, but one that was worthwhile for anyone who lived in Calgary. And again, you know, so the book, If These Walls Could Talk, forward by Jerome McGinley. I mean, that kind of makes sense.
Mr. Calgary Flame himself.
Yes. So how did Peter get to Calgary? It wasn't easy, but it was worthwhile. I'm sure he'll tell us on the other side.
Tonight, live from the Scotiabank Saddledome, you can put it in the wind column, way off, yeah, baby!
Peter Maher was born November 11th, 1949, in Campbellton, New Brunswick. An avid sports fan from his earliest days, Peter got the announcing bug at age 14 when he started introducing the lineups for the Campbellton Softball League. After high school graduation, Peter went to Fort Wayne, Indiana to cover the Comets in the International Hockey League. He returned home in 1970 to announce games in the North Shore Hockey League, and in 1978 got his big break when he was chosen to become the Toronto Maple Leafs' new radio play-by-play announcer. In 1980, Peter became the first radio announcer for the Calgary Flames, and a legend was born.
Tries to get it to McDonald behind the net. He does. McDonald scores! Randy McDonald has scored his 500th goal! A standing ovation in the Saddledome. Andy is just Andy.
Peter's Maher dream was to be a broadcaster in the National Hockey League, and he's certainly now in the Hall of Fame. As soon as I met him, I knew that this was a guy that was going to be easy to work with, and also a guy that would do his homework. And as far as I'm concerned, he's as good as a play-by-play man that's ever lived.
The one thing about Peter Maher, he always seemed to track down Calgary natives. And me being one, wherever I was, whether it was New York or Hartford, I was always interviewed by Peter Maher. So I formed a relationship with him then, and I knew him a little bit. And then coming back to Calgary after my career, and as they say, the rest was history. Worked 12 years with Peter in the broadcast booth.
We're the winners! We're the winners! Yeah, baby! Yeah, baby! Yeah, baby!
Peter had a way about himself. He's such a friendly and easygoing guy that he was part of our inner circle. Not many color or TV commentators or radio commentators, play-by-play guys ever get in that inner circle on a team. And Pete was well deserving of being that because he was one of the guys.
What he did as a professional, you know, on the radio, there was something, but also what he did with us on the team, traveling with us all the time, I thought that was very, very special. I think he did so much for this team, you know, so Peter became a really good friend. So.
You can't say enough good things about him because he's...
Hello.
I am looking for the legendary Peter Maher. It's his good friend Mike Richards calling from rawmikeRichards.com.
Mike Richards, my goodness. Yeah. Been a while.
You're probably thinking, damn it. I thought I had an unlisted number. Yeah, you don't need this. It's like those Mika Kippersoft calls. He was never.
Wake him up.
You realize, Pete, there were a lot of people who would send Kelly Kirsch like angry emails and letters saying, "Could you please have Mike Richards not keep calling Mika Kippersoft and getting him out of bed?" People thought,
really, wow.
Well, hey, look, for some people this morning, because we're being heard right here as always on Sportsnet, the Fan 960. They're hearing us together. It's the first time, and you know what? It's a shame when I look back on how many years ago it was, Pete, because I left so quickly. You and I never had a chance to even talk before I left. And,
no, we didn't.
No,
I always felt too bad that we hadn't. Would have liked to have had a chance to have a beer and sort of say goodbye and thanks for all of the great times we had. So.
Well, Peter, I don't know if I had a more cherished time with anybody on the air in my entire career. I know I tweeted it out when you got into the Hall of Fame, when I saw all the accolades being celebrated in Calgary. But I can say in my Hall of Fame, I don't think there was anyone that I was closer to, anyone that I look more forward to, and in a real true sense, truly love the guy, and that is you, and that's what I so much enjoyed having in Calgary. There'll be nothing more special to me, and I don't think there'll be a nicer, a more kinder individual that I had on any of my radio shows. And of course, you were important to me, you were important to my son Jordan. We got a chance to play golf. I think that Calgary was very, very lucky that you took that very windy road from the East Coast, made it all the way to Calgary. I think we're all better for it. I know I am.
Well, thank you very much for the very, very kind words. I must say you are certainly greatly missed here. I mean, it seems that wherever I go, people are always bringing up those great performances you'd have in the morning on the radio, and then some of the greater performances you'd have when you were out speaking publicly. So you've certainly left quite an impact here in those 6 or 7 years you were in this great city.
Well, it is a great city. I do miss it terribly. It really has become my hometown. And, for you, obviously, it is your hometown. But, the traveling and sort of the exhaustion it takes to do that particular job that you had for so many years, I just wonder, do you miss it? And if you do, what are the things that you miss about being the voice of the Calgary Flames?
Well, I think probably the two things I miss the most are the people. As one of them, the people that you were around on a daily basis throughout the course of the winter season, be it the players, the coaches, the management, media people, fans, and that sort of thing. That is the big thing that they miss, the interaction with those people. You still have some interaction once in a while with those folks, but not nearly as much as I had then. The other thing that I find difficult in adjusting to, and I think anybody who has retired can follow this line, is that you find time along at times. Especially that first year when I retired 4 years ago, I had a hard time putting in time when I was in Calgary during the winter. You're so used to being so busy. I remember when you were here, Mike, the first thing I would do when I wake up was start focusing on our little hit we would do for 15 or 20 minutes every morning at 8 o'clock. And then from there it was on to focus on the game or practice or the travel or that sort of thing. So filling in the time, that was a big adjustment, and it still is an adjustment even at this time, even though I've been at it now for 4 years. So when I'm away down to the sunshine places like Palm Springs or Phoenix, then I can play some golf and that type of thing. So it's much better. But I don't have any winter hobbies here. If you'd have stayed, maybe I have some now.
Yeah, bad ones, terrible ones.
Peter, David Bastel here. Great to talk to you. I want to ask you about the book, Triumph Books, by the way, the publishing company with George Johnson. If these walls could talk, everything about the Calgary Flames, it's a must-read for Flames fans. Christmas is around the corner, so this is the perfect stocking stuffer for that. What gave you the idea of the book? Who approached you on it, or did you approach publishers and say, you know what, I got a million ideas, and you know what, rightfully so, and a million stories. How did this all come about?
Well, David, originally I had no desire whatever to write a book. And when I did retire, it was asked by 3 or 4 different people, including Bruce Dobigan, who, of course, Mike is familiar with from his time here in Calgary.
Absolutely.
He's an author of several books. We talked briefly about a book, and I expressed to him, no, I have no desire at all to write a book on my career. And then 2.5 years ago, George Johnson approached me, and George, about the possibility of writing this book. He was connected with Triumph Publishing from an earlier book that he had written, and he said that they were looking at having play-by-play broadcasters from NHL teams, NFL teams, Major League Baseball teams, and NBA teams do a book, and he was wondering if I'd be interested in collaborating with them. So after some thought, I figured, well, George would probably be the ideal guy to collaborate with, given the fact that in the 34 years that I broadcast Flames hockey, George was on the beat for about 22 or 24 of those years as a writer with either the Calgary Sun or the Calgary Herald. So he could relate to a lot of things that I would have experienced. So that's where the impetus came from. And then we went to work at it, and I basically talked it. I talked it into my smartphone and then would send what I had there to George, and he and his wife Rita would transcribe it and then pick out what was important for the book, and it went on from there. So we're pleased now that it's out and being published, and hopefully there's some great insights in there for Flame fans and other fans of hockey to follow from my years from 1980 to 2014 with the Flames.
Well, it's outstanding, and you know what? A lot of people, growing up, you listen to Peter Maher on the radio, and you listen to Flames games and so forth. But I knew you started off with the Toronto Maple Leafs, but I'm just kind of curious, and you do talk about it in the book. So you are going to be telling a little bit of a story here. But your move from Toronto to Calgary, how did it actually happen? And to make that jump, considering you're an East Coaster by birth, how did that jump move? Because Atlanta moved to Calgary, and so did Peter Maher.
Yeah, there were a combination of things that developed. I was very, very fortunate that a couple of things kind of came my way. First of all, getting the job in Toronto to broadcast the Maple Leaf games. What had transpired there was that in the long weekend that we have, the Labor Day long weekend there in September, I was involved in a ball tournament in my hometown in Campbellton, New Brunswick, and I was wrapped up in that and didn't have much time to look at newspapers or anything. And a friend of mine came to me and showed me a 3-paragraph story that was in the provincial paper about the Maple Leaf play-by-play job opening up because Foster Hewitt Station had lost the rights to broadcast Maple Leaf games, and there was a new station, a startup station in Toronto, CKO, on the FM dial that had outbid them. And so the story just said they weren't sure what they're going to do about play-by-play broadcasters. So on the Tuesday after the long weekend, I sent a recording of my work to David Ruskin, whose name was on in the newspaper story. And so he got back to me about 2 weeks after that and said I was one of 3 finalists for the job, and they wanted me to go to Toronto for an exhibition game. The exhibition season had already started. They still hadn't selected the play-by-play guy and hadn't carried any games on the air yet. So I went in, did one period of that game, and then found out I had the job, and then I had to immediately go right back to Toronto and begin work there broadcasting Maple Leaf games. And then after the 79-80 season, the radio station decided not to rebid for the rights in Toronto, but it worked out really well for me because the Flame games that I had the Leaf games that I broadcast were being aired in Calgary, or at least some of them anyway, since the Flames were not here yet. And that transpired, came about with the Flames coming to Calgary from Atlanta, and the broadcaster for the Flames in Atlanta was Jinx McDonald. He went to New York with the Islanders, so it presented an opening, and I was able to get that job, and the rest is history. So that's how it all evolved. And
wow.
You need a few breaks, as you guys know, in the business, or any business for that matter, and I was fortunate to get them, and it went on to an outstanding time and enjoyable career that I had.
We're in conversation with the legendary Peter Maher here on rawmikerichards.com, also heard exclusively on Sportsnet Fan 960. Pete, you've seen a lot of characters come through, and I've met a lot of them.
No character greater than you.
Okay, let's talk then.
Of all those characters I met.
Well, there were some beauties on that Calgary Flames team, some lasting longer than others. I mean, we certainly have our favorites. I still think that when I tell stories about Jerome McGinley, people are always ask me, okay, well, it just sounds too nice. I mean, we've seen him play. I mean, is he that nice? I don't know if I've met a guy that it's as a fierce competitor as he is, a guy that would come into shape each and every year better than the year before, better than the next. He was an absolute machine, and truly, aside from getting him mad, which was always a bad idea for the other team, I don't know if I've met a more, I guess the word I'd use is gentleman than Jerome McGinley. He would be one of my favorites of all time, I think.
No question, and we were fortunate to have Jerome write the foreword for the book. And, in the book, in his foreword, he mentions the fact that he felt that I was the only guy that saw him play every game that he played with the Flames over 16 years here with the team. And I don't know of anybody else that could have seen all the games because there were different coaches, different trainers, different players. And I guess I was the one consistent, having broadcast every game that he played with the Flames. And you're right, this is a guy that was a tremendous, tremendous competitor on the ice. He would battle tooth and nail to get the upper hand on the opposition. And then off the ice, you couldn't find a greater guy. I told some stories in the book, and I also told some stories the day that he announced his retirement as a Flame during the past summer of off the ice with this guy, how he would go out of his way to facilitate fans in signing autographs. And one night that stands out was when the Flames defeated San Jose in the Western Conference Final in 2004. That game was played in the Scotiabank Saddledome in Calgary, and after the game, when I was leaving, which was about an hour, 15 minutes after the game had ended, it was raining, and out in the parking lot up the Saddledome, there was Jerome in the middle of the parking lot in the rain, signing autographs for a bunch of kids, and not only signing autographs, but asking them how they were doing in school and that sort of thing. And, it was a night to be celebrating, and I'm sure he'd get up with his teammates later, but he took time for the kids at that point. And that's just one example of what he was like off the ice, and then on the ice, such a tremendously driven player. And you're right, if you knocked him off of his game or tried to, he would get you back in many, many ways with all the great performances that he put on with this team.
Yeah, he certainly was a Hall of Famer to be, Jerome McGinley and yourself. So it worked out quite well. When you talk and you research the players over the decades from both teams, what was some of the trickier pronunciations? Because I know there's a chapter in it. Because these players aren't from just Canada and the United States, Peter. As you know, they come from all parts of the world. Was there ever a tricky name that gave you a hard time, or you had to kind of double check, and you had to be careful when you're actually broadcasting the game because you only get that one chance when you're doing the play-by-play?
Yeah, that's interesting that you would mention that. Getting the proper pronunciation of players always was a tricky thing, and you never knew whether you were getting the exact right pronunciation from the player. I recall they had a player here that played defense. Tony Lignan was the guy that came over here from Finland, was playing with the Flames. And when he first came, I went to him and he said, "Well, Tony, how do you pronounce your last name?" And he said to me, "Well, pronounce it any way you want." So I said, "Well, Lignan is the way I would pronounce it. Is that right?" And he says, "Yeah, that's right." So then I called him that all the time he played with the Flames. And then soon after he was traded to Buffalo, they started calling him Ludman. And when he came back to Calgary the first time as a member of the Sabres, I went to him in the dressing room after the morning skate. I said, "They're calling you Ludman now. I was calling you Lidman," and he told me that was the proper way. So which is the proper way? And again, he said, "Any way you want to call it." So you get those type of things that happen. And another one that stands out, a more recent vintage, is the current captain of the Flames, Marc Giordano. When he came to the team, everybody here in the media, everybody elsewhere called him Giordano.
Yes.
And then we were later to find out that he pronounced it Giordano. And so you never know when you're talking to the players. Sometimes when you're talking to them, they're rookies, they're young guys, and they don't want to mess up anything, and so pretty much go along with anything that you want to call them. So those are tricky little things that develop. There was another time when back in the 80s when the Russians first came to North America to play some games against club teams in the NHL. The morning skate, I brought my tape recorder down there and talked to the interpreter for the Russian team to get the proper pronunciation of the players and to coordinate with their numbers. So you go back that afternoon and can memorize that for the game, memorizing the proper pronunciation and with the corresponding numbers. And then they come on the ice for the warm-up, and half the numbers have been changed. So those are all kinds of little things that develop that you got to be aware of as a play-by-play broadcaster. So it seemed to be noted at that time the Russians did that frequently. They would change numbers before the start of games and that sort of thing to try to cross up the opposition. They didn't think they'd try to cross up the broadcaster, too.
Well, yeah, we've never trusted them since, Pete. I don't care what they say. I still don't trust them. So looking at this version of the Calgary Flames, they actually play, like the style has changed so much because of rule changes over the years. And so, therefore, I think that the NHL has more parity than any other league. I think that the best team in the night can lose to the team that is on the lowest level simply because if you don't give 100%, it's that old thing, you playing 110% every day. If you don't do it, you lose. So on any given night, anyone can beat anybody else. So to be really good at it is quite a miracle. So looking at what Las Vegas did last year is just it's hard to get my head around it. But when you take a look at this current Calgary Flames team, what do you make of them so far?
Well, they've gotten off to a so-so start. They're basically a 500 team here the first 10 or 12 games of the regular season, and I think to me that doesn't come as too much of a surprise. I think on paper they have a better team than they had last year with the added depth on the forward ranks. But so far, that hasn't manifested itself on the ice to any degree of regularity with regard to victories. But I think there are a number of reasons for that. There's a new coach here with Bill Peters. They've got about 7 or 8 new players that were not with the team last season, and Peters has a new style that he wants them to play, so he's incorporating that into the team. And one of the problems with that was that they went to China to play a couple of preseason games with Boston, and they ended up not able to have practice for a couple of the days because they couldn't get their equipment away from customs. I think they had to bribe them to get their equipment out of customs, so they missed a couple of days of practice there. With all the travel that was going on to get there and then to come back here, they missed some very valuable time, which with a team that had been together a lot, that would be fine. But when you're bringing in a new coach and a bunch of new players, they just didn't have the proper time to get adjusted into the new system that Coach Bill Peters wants them to play. So I believe they'll turn this thing around and have themselves a pretty good season. I'm looking for them not necessarily to be a Stanley Cup contender, but I think they should be a playoff team in the Pacific Division and go from there. But they need to be better than what they had been in the early going, and I think that'll come in time.
Pete, I can't tell you how great it is to hear your voice. The fact that we're going to see some of the words in the book called "If These Walls Could Talk." Once again, George Johnson, and the forward by Iggy, which I know is going to be. What a great thing for Christmas for certainly people in Calgary, but really hockey people in general. This is a fantastic idea. And here's an idea that's not fantastic. Next time in town, we should get together. I know that you probably will have a for sale sign on your house when I come by. I realize this may not be something your family wants to see, but of course my son Jordan is still there. I still have a house there. You know me, I always keep my foot just in case. Just on.
Oh, is that right? I didn't realize you kept all your holdings here.
Yeah,
wow.
I just it's tough to take the Calgary out of the boy, and of course you're a big part of that. So next time I get to Calgary, we'll get Rolly Sear to pay the bill. And
we'll definitely get Rolly. You're right. Get him to pay.
And we'll get him. But it's so great.
I work for Rolly now, you know.
Oh, you do?
Well, I do some work at the Flame games now, and with the Flames alumni dressing room experience that they had prior to the start of each Flame game. I'm kind of the host in there with a former player, and we tell stories for a little while with people that are in there having some refreshments and getting an opportunity to see the players up close. So essentially, Rolly's one of my bosses.
Oh, God, I thought you were going to say mowing his lawn and washing his car. Yeah, that's not.
No, I haven't got to that yet.
Got that yet. Well, Pete, you take care. When I get in town again, you and I are definitely going to sit down with a cold beverage in front of us.
Sounds great, Mike. You guys take care. And Mike and Dave, thanks very much for allowing me time to promote the book. Take care.
Take care, Peter.
Thanks, Peter.
That is Peter Maher, the legend. Wow, Davey. Look, people generally don't know how these kinds of things work, but it is David who went out and got someone who's so close to me. I thought, don't make it too personal, because I guess what? He's one of the few guys that if I start talking too much about it, you're going to, I turn into Messier or Gretzky when they're leaving Edmonton, and you don't need to see that. but he really is that special. Once again, if you didn't get a chance to hear the name of the book, it is If These Walls Could Talk. And it's Peter Maher with George Johnson, the longtime writer George Johnson, and the forward by Jerome McGinley. That is, as they say, just in time for Christmas. But truly, it is. If you're a Flames fan,
Flames fan, it's a necessity. Hockey fan, or enjoy the game in any form. Peter Maher is a Hall of Famer for a reason, and as good as he is as a broadcaster, he's a better person. That's the quality of Peter Maher. I got to know him for the year I was in Calgary. Unfortunately for me, it was only a year. But the day I walked into that Flames dressing room and you see a whole bunch of people you kind of know but you don't know, Peter Maher made you feel like I've known you for decades. Yeah. That's the kind of person he was. He's usually the first one at the rink. He's usually the last one to leave. And he is without a doubt a better person than he is broadcaster, and he might be one of the best broadcasters of all time.
You know what? He's in that category, Dave. See if you agree with me, because I think you probably will. But the accolades and some of the adjectives used in talking about Peter are almost very similar, if not identical, to a Jerry Howarth.
Yeah.
I would hard worker.
I would say that.
Yeah, you know what? Just excellent at their craft. They remember everybody's name. Yep. They're always kind and gentle. To me, both of those guys, and I've bin fortunate, both of us in our careers.
In their respective sports, yes, exactly.
To know people like that. So that to me is, for today in particular very, very special, Davey, and I thank you for doing that, because that feels like a bit of a gift from me, but hopefully everyone out there feels the same way. You're watching Raw Mike Richards, either on the dedicated YouTube channel, and make sure you're going to want to subscribe to that, or, of course, the website itself, and also heard exclusively here on Sportsnet, the Fan 960. So we go from Peter Maher to Bob Cole. Now, apparently, Bob Cole is doing some games, right?
Yes, he is.
So
limited amount, unfortunately.
Sort of like how Keith Jackson, when he was kind of, remember he'd still do the big bowl games. He'd do some stuff. They're going to do stuff with Bob. Now, we've had Bob Cole, our version of it, on many times. And someone was asking me the other day, they'd gone to a hockey game. I didn't recognize the teams. It was women's hockey. Well, I don't know much about it, but I do know when Bob Cole was asked to do one of the games, I really don't think he was comfortable with it either.
And with 4:37 left to go in the first period, it's the Toronto Furies and the other team. And I'll tell you right now, they're really pouring it on. They've got at least 57 seconds left to go in the power play, and I'm joined by former women's coach, Pat. What do they need to do to get this puck in the net?
Well, I think if the girls continue to cycle down low and maybe go to that reverse umbrella.
Ooh. Puck's dropped. And it goes back to the girl. Over to another girl. Here's a shot. Oh, she didn't miss by much, that girl. And now it's that looked like she was trying to do a backhand. That's good stuff. They're really pouring it on now, the Furies.
Very often I used to tell my forwards.
No, not now. Oh, they freeze the puck. And they get another face-off.
Sometimes I would take the girls in the summer and we'd all practice the power play in the beach. And we'd all wear bikinis, even me.
Oh, so you're a girl.
Yeah, as you can see, it wasn't exactly what they were hoping for. If you're a Bo Sox fan, what were you hoping for? Well, probably what you saw over the weekend, although I tried to stay up to watch that frickin' 18-inning game, and because after a while you're so invested in it, I'm staying up till whoever wins. I am staying up for this one. Of course, the Dodgers win that game. But it was, who would have thought that it was going to be Pierce, who was
former Blue Jay great.
and ends up being like the MVP. Like, it was freakishly almost good if you're part of the Pierce family. But I got to be honest, I think the fact is, Dave, that in that particular sport, the way that it played from the very beginning of the year, I'm sure if you didn't have the Red Sox at least going to the World Series or winning it, it was in of conversation, considering how much money they have spent, where they spent it. Mm-hmm. I think there's also something to argue about how they spent it. You know that the Yankees at some point, are we looking at possibly, as we look at Major League Baseball in the next, 2-3 years, that we're looking at sort of those classic, monstrous, iconic sort of Red Sox Yankee teams, because the way they built, there's a lot of youth on there, and I don't know if necessarily this is going to go away anytime soon, especially for the Yankees.
Yeah, so the Yankees are going to be there even more so. This was just the first step of Yankee development. I expect the Yankees to win a World Series within the next 2 to 3 years. I don't think the Astros are going away anytime soon. The Bo Sox will be there because they're Boston. I think that's going to be your superpowers in the American League. We'll have to see what happens on the West Coast with the LA teams and so forth. In the National League, the Braves will do something soon. They're a young team. They're not money heavy where they've bought the team. They've actually developed the team. They have the right general manager in place to continue to develop that team. And when it's time to strike, Alex Anthopoulos will strike, and I think this Braves team could be part of a World Series matchup with maybe a Boston, maybe a New York, but I think the Braves are going to be back as well.
Well, if you're going to beat the Dodgers in Los Angeles, a name like Kershaw is going to show up. Now, considering they had 270 pitchers go in that game that went forever, you had the guys you wanted on the mound, but Boston got it done. I said Pierce was a big part of that, if not the star. And so if you're part of the Bo Sox nation, this is what you wanted to see. Property of Major League Baseball and Major League Baseball Advanced Media.
Strategically, 2-2. High fly ball into left. Back at the wall. It is gone. Betts has made it 3-1. Clayton's got to buckle down now. High fly ball into center. Back at the wall. It is gone. Martinez goes deep. 4-1 Boston here in the 7th.
It would end up being 5-1, Dave, but as you said beforehand, this is a team that, there are some Blue Jay fans, including one I know in particular, my brother-in-law. Because of John Farrell, they just always wish bad things for the Bo Sox.
John Farrell hasn't been there for a while. That's the funniest part.
But people talk like that. It's like,
Yep.
yeah, Farrell, what he did. You mean
Yes.
go back to his dream team? As you saw on the Richard Harrell show a couple of days ago
That's
that we
right.
had. I don't know. I don't know. I suppose that if you bleed for that team, if it goes to, of course, with I guess a Blue Jay fan, a Red Sox fan, is going to make you angry. But for the most part, I like Boston teams. Guess what? If you live in Boston, you get treated every once in a while, if not every single year, to someone winning a championship.
That's the thing. I know.
Like truly, if you're of a certain age, I would think that you've seen parades.
Yeah, multiple parades. It's almost getting to be kind of, who is it this time? Celtics? Okay. Oh, it's the Patriots again, isn't it? And now it's the Red Sox. And I mean, the Bruins even won a Stanley Cup. Well, it has been a while back, but they did
not that long ago.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you got to remember these things happen in cycles, or supposed to happen in cycles, not like in Boston where it seems to happen every other year. If you win a Stanley Cup in your lifetime, no matter what team you cheer for, you're very fortunate. You're very fortunate.
Oh, so that brings us to the Dave Mastel question of the day. Dave,
fire away.
Thanks for playing our game. Here we go. The next parade that happens in Toronto will be for what team?
Oh, boy.
That's a tough one.
Well, Alex, I will say Toronto Maple Leafs.
Yeah.
I will say the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Because people say Raptors. I'm not saying Raptors.
Well, I can't say Raptors just because of what they... You know what? I'll say this. It would not surprise me if the Raptors are part of the NBA championship, but guess what? That means it's a one-way ticket out of the playoffs because you have to face the Golden State Warriors. Now, stranger things have happened.
Right.
Maybe somebody knocks off Golden State and hell freezes over and the Statue of Liberty tips. And those three things could happen. Are they likely to happen?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Thanks for playing. Come on down. There. Did you ever watch The Price is Right? That was never a thing for me.
I did, actually.
The Bob Barker one, probably.
Yeah. No, yeah. Drew Carey sucks.
I don't even.
No thanks.
He looks too weird skinny. I just can't handle it.
Well, yeah. Drew Carey's supposed to be fat.
Yeah,
I don't sit there and wish anybody to not be at peak
healthy,
physical,
whatever,
healthy condition, but Drew Carey is not supposed to weigh less than me. And he does.
So stop being so skinny.
Thank you.
I think that's our message.
Thank you. That is the message
here today. We'll do a couple of things before. The Bombers and the Stamps. And of course, for the Stampeders, they have run into a rough patch.
Woof.
And as we said the week beforehand, it ain't going to get any easier in Winnipeg. It also doesn't get any easier when they must have reached into the old Bomber bag of tricks and said, you know what we haven't played in a while?
Exactly.
Fog.
The
Fog Bowl. Well, it came their way again, and maybe just in time, because I'll tell you what, the Bombers look pretty good once again, property of Bell Media and the CFL.
They win it. Nichols again rolling wide open.
Who caught it? Is there a game? Is there a game going on?
There's lots going on in this play. Misdirection in a couple of different ways.
Yeah, you do misdirection seriously in games like this. If you're the corner,
the other's direction.
If you do misdirection in these games, you may end up in section 17.
That's right.
Leaving Wolotarski in behind.
Boy, there's a Canadian name for it right there. It is a CFL name.
Completion over the middle to Jackson. Fumble. And Winnipeg's got it.
See, this is the kind of stuff for me, Dave, when it gets down to playoff time, gets into the nasty, you start getting snow and stuff.
Yep.
This is what you need your team to do.
Bingo.
In its favor. Those classic Bomber defenses of, let's say, the mid to late 90s, this is what they did.
Causes the fumble.
I like those unis back then, too.
And creates another takeaway and another big play for number 4.
Oh, Huddle. Back to Harris, straight ahead. First down, Moore. Harris to the 2. Strevler with 8 touchdown runs on the year. And he'll go left side, go wide, touchdown.
The Bombers go on to win. That technically puts them into the playoffs.
Yes.
And I got
third place.
You know what? Which team do you not want to play right now?
Oof.
You could make argument. I mean, Saskatchewan maybe is a little bit of that. Right now, Calgary, it's sort of like when people started beating Tiger Woods. You start to lose that intimidation factor.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if I'm looking at all the teams from around the league, well, in the East, only really Ottawa's playing. Only really Ottawa's starting to play.
Honestly, it is.
Yeah.
And if you're the BC Lions, you're probably pretty happy with the crossover because, excuse me, because the Hamilton Ticats are just aching with injury.
Yeah.
The number one receiver in the league, in my opinion, is gone. And then after that, it's like, man, you're missing a couple people on defense, and are they able to beat the BC Lions? Yeah, I think they can, but I don't think anybody's beating the Ottawa Red Blacks. And then we'll see what happens in the West, because that's a little bit of a fight. I think the best thing we could say about this CFL season, Edmonton's not in the playoffs.
Yeah, okay.
That's always good.
That's the one good thing, but there's been some bad football. But the one thing that I always notice when teams are out or they've had a particularly tough year is how they finish.
Yeah.
Because Dave, as professionals, you've got management up there saying, did you see Russell Graham mailing it in the last couple of games? Russell Graham will find himself, I'm sorry, Russell, but probably not on the team next year.
What team did he get cut by?
The fantasy team.
The fantasy
Because if we're going this far, then I better, you know what I'm saying.
They're the ones with the purple and silver jerseys?
Yeah, purple and silver.
Yeah.
It's not bad.
Okay.
But for Johnny Manziel and for the Montreal Alouettes, the one thing I will say is they go out there and they seem to still compete. And I'm still sticking with the fact that I'm watching the progression of Johnny Manziel, and here's what I would say about him. He's making good reads. He's starting to make really good decisions. And I'm not talking about whether he'd go to the NFL or not. Can he play in this league? Is he a starting quarterback? My answer is yes. My answer is yes. Even on a decent team with a couple of weapons, the answer is yes. I just like how he's seeing the field. And guess what? When he's running, at the end of the run, he's hook sliding. That's what I want to see as a professional, Dave. I don't want to see someone who thinks that they're back in college, their NCAA team, or I don't want to see the ability where you think you can actually outrun and not get popped by someone as a professional. He's now running at the right times and he's getting down. Once again, not the greatest of years for the Owls, but you know what? For Johnny Manziel, I think the progress still continues.
Just a few days away now. Johnny Manziel after a touchdown drive starting at midfield, and Eugene Lewis bounces off a tackle, and he's in business. Lewis, regardless, up at their 49 for Manziel and the Owls. Off that block field goal. Out to Eugene Lewis, who throws it for a touchdown to George Johnson.
Nice play call.
As the Alouettes open up the bag of tricks in a 61-yard TD, courtesy the arms of Manziel and then Lewis. Going right for the
it's tough on a defense, Dave, when the receivers are throwing for touchdowns. Mm-hmm. That's the when the kickers start doing it, just take your helmet off and go home. But this was a great call. And again, as I'm saying, done at the right time. So that's the OC who did a great job here, recognize the defense.
Lewis gets it out of his hands quickly to drop it into George Johnson. He's off to the races. Little help from Ernest Jackson.
And George Johnson just writing Peter Maher's book, too.
Yeah, he's doing everything.
Tempo. And Manziel takes off again and slides down inside the Argo 45. Starts to a Montreal.
Just taking the ball. Watch the opening.
Manziel yet to win. As a starting quarterback, he's on the move again. We've seen some running from Johnny Manziel in this drive.
That's what I'm talking about. So I'm not really worried. I'm not going to make a comparison to Texas A&M. I'm not making a comparison to the Browns or anything else that he's ever done. I want to know from my athlete and from my quarterback, is he understanding the game? Is it slowing down enough that he's making the right calls and the right decisions? I think the answer is yes.
Oh, yes.
So
I like them this week, too, by the way, just because of how the schedule works out. You look at a lot of teams outside of Calgary and Saskatchewan that need to win to solidify spots. Hamilton plays Montreal, and Hamilton can't get more injured.
Well,
does Montreal go there and win? I think they do. I think they do.
You're a gambling man, aren't you, Dave?
Well, sometimes.
Yeah. Well, we're both married, so wow. There's.
Yeah.
Hey, the girls are rolling the dice on that one.
Oh, big time.
Hey, should we ask them today if they think that they came up winners? Yeah, you know what's coming.
What? Did we just become best friends? Yep. You want to go do karate in the garage? Yep. It's time!
So the book is called If These Walls Could Talk. Peter Maher, our very good friend and one of my favorite people on the whole planet. Written by George Johnson, forward by Iggy Jerome McGinley. That was just so much fun. What a treat having him on today. It really was. So thanks to Pete. He's still working for Rolly. Hey, Rolly, don't be cheap. Oh, and there's someone else I want you to hire.
Let's get ready to rumble!
Initials are JR. We have an extraordinary announcement to make in the next couple of weeks if you're Raw Mike Richards fans. I've been saying it's coming. That time is here. Keep it on Twitter. Keep it on social media. If you're a Raw Mike Richards fan, fans of both myself and Dave, stay tuned.